Everyone, my name is Dr. Ahmad, and in this presentation, we will learn about the sympathetic nervous system. It is a second component of the autonomic nervous system, and it is associated with the fight or flight response of the body. So, as you can see in the previous slide, this is also called as the thoracolumbar system. The major nerves that make up the sympathetic nervous system, they extend from T1 to L2 and L3, and we will see in detail how these major divisions are actually coming out of the spinal cord and making the splanchnic nerves, which in turn supplies the entire body. The reason is that the cell bodies of the preganglionic nerve fibers, they reside in the thorax and the lumbar portion of the spinal cord. And you can see the last point on this slide. It says there that T1 and T5 makes the splanchnic nerves, which we will going to discuss in more details. They supply the head, neck, and the thorax region. So you can also see that from T5 to L2 and L3, it will innervate the viscera of the abdomen and pelvis via the sympathetic splanchnic nerves. These are not to be confused with the splanchnic nerves of the parasympathetic nervous system, which is made from S2, S3, and S4. The segments of T5 to L2 and L3 will supply the viscera of the abdomen and pelvis through the splanchnic nerves. Again, they are further divided into greater, lesser, least, lumbar, and pelvic splanchnic nerves. But what is the splanchnic nerves? We are going to see that in more details in the following coming slides. So far, this was the basic layout of the sympathetic nervous system. But how does these nerves innervate the organs? How do they make their way through the body? And what path do they follow? We're going to look in greater details in the following slides. And this is called the sympathetic flow. So you will see that the nerves of the sympathetic nervous system, they send out the axons via the outflow tract. There are different variation to it depending on the areas of the body where the sympathetic nervous system is supplying to, that including the peripheral nervous system, limbs, and the viscera. The basic layout for the sympathetic outflow is as follow. But how does this system distribute to the periphery internally and through the viscera? We're going to see that now. So as you can see in this diagram, you're looking at the major blueprint of how the sympathetic outflow is originating. On the diagram, on the left side, you see the spinal cord. The blue line that you see right here is the axon of the preganglionic nerve fiber, which is a motor fiber, and the cell body, this blue star right here, is a cell body, and it is residing in the lateral horn of the spinal cord. The preganglionic nerve fiber right here, it actually goes down through the anterior nerve root, and it will run through the white ramus communicans right here. So with this white ramus communicans, why is it called a white ramus? Because the nerve fiber that is coming here is a myelinated one, hence the name white ramus communicans. You can also see the sympathetic ganglion right here, and you see these three dotted lines. So one is actually exiting through the sympathetic ganglion right here, one is going down, and one is going up. So these are the ones it shows at this level, like if it's going to synapse here, if it's going to synapse with a postganglionic neuron. And once the synapse occurs, you see this red line or red star right there. That's the cell body for the postganglionic cell body for postganglionic nerve. And you see the nerve, if it's leaving at the same levels, it actually leave through the gray ramus communicans, and this red line is going to go into the spinal nerve right there, and it's a postganglionic fiber. So please remember this basic layout, because this is going to be repeated again and again in the coming slides. So coming to the sympathetic chain. So this sympathetic chain is called the paravertebral ganglia, because these sympathetic ganglion are present alongside the vertebral column, and it extends all the way from cervical to the lumbar vertebra. So now we're going to look in detail the sympathetic outflow tract for the body wall and limbs, which is somatic. So the nerves of the preganglionic nerve fibers will run through the anterior root, then through the white ramus communicans, and will enter the sympathetic ganglion. You see here that this red line right here, once again, it's a preganglionic nerve fiber. It originated from the spinal cord right there, going through the anterior root. right like this, and then entering into the sympathetic ganglia via the white ramus communicans. Here it is making a synapse with the postganglionic nerve fiber, then entering into the gray ramus communicans and exiting via the spinal nerve. Now at this level the decision is made. Sometime the synapse happens here or elsewhere. Let's see that. So again, you see the first, we are going to look at the first instance of how it happens. You're looking at a preganglionic nerve fiber coming through the anterior root, going through the white ramus communicans. But at this level, it's in this sympathetic ganglia, it is actually making a synapse with the postganglionic nerve fiber. And the postganglionic nerve fiber is exiting through the gray ramus communicans and it's leaving the spinal nerve. And then it's going to make its way to the limb and the body wall. That's what we are looking for. Now we are looking at the body wall limb in the second scenario. So you see here that in the second instance, the preganglionic nerve fiber, again the same path flow, white ramus, sorry, the anterior root going down to white ramus communicans, making, and then it either go up or go down. So I either go either the superior level or it's going to go through the inferior level, and then the postganglionic nerve is going to postganglionic nerve fiber is going to leave through the gray ramus communicans and then enter the spinal nerve. So now we are going to look at the sympathetic outflow through the cervical area, head and neck. So the same path flow, same outflow tract. It's the preganglionic nerve fiber. It is going to run through the anterior nerve root, pass through the white ramus communicans, then it will synapse with the postganglionic nerve fiber at a higher level in the sympathetic ganglion. Then the postganglionic nerve fiber will leave the sympathetic ganglion and innervate the target organs. So usually the postganglionic nerve fiber, it is going to run along the major arteries to reach the target organs. So in the cervical head and neck area, the main arteries that it can follow is the vertebral arteries or the carotid arteries. So let's look at the diagram so it will give you more details on it. So in this diagram, you see on the left side, again, spinal cord, preganglionic nerve fiber, anterior root, coming down to the white ramus communicans. But instead of synapsing with the postganglionic nerve fiber in this sympathetic ganglia, it actually goes up right here in this sympathetic ganglia up through the paravertebral ganglia or the sympathetic chain, and it's communicating with the postganglionic nerve fiber here at this level, and then exiting through gray ramus communicans, then out in the spinal nerve. And now you see here on the second diagram, this blue line is the sympathetic nerve that's going up, and it is hitchhiking along the major one of the carotid arteries. So this is the cervical area, head and neck supply for the sympathetic outflow. So next we're going to look at the thoracic viscera. So in the thoracic viscera, it's basically the same. It's the same until it reaches the sympathetic trunk, preganglionic nerve fiber, anterior root, white ramus communicans, and then it will synapse with the postganglionic nerve fiber at the same level. And then it is going to leave the sympathetic ganglion, making the postganglionic nerve fiber will leave the sympathetic ganglion and make the cardiopulmonary splanchnic nerves. So these splanchnic nerves are then going to make the plexus like the cardiac, pulmonary, and esophageal. But what is the splanchnic nerve? That's the question that what we have been asking since the beginning of this presentation. The splanchnic nerve is that any nerve that is going to leave the sympathetic ganglia but does not enter the spinal nerve is actually called the splanchnic nerve. It will still synapse, it will still make the innervation of the target organs, but it does not leave through the spinal nerve, but it's going to make its own way. So here is the thoracic viscera. Once again, we are looking at the sympathetic outflow for the thoracic viscera. You see the preganglionic nerve fiber leaving through the anterior root, coming down to white ramus communicans, but it's actually leaving at the same level in the sympathetic ganglia. This green line is the postganglionic nerve fiber, and instead of leaving through the spinal nerve, it's actually leaving right away from the sympathetic ganglia. On the second diagram, you look at T1, T2, T3, T4, and here is a T5. It's not shown in the diagram, but you see these green line. These are the postganglionic nerve fiber. They leave right here and they make a plexus. So these plexus are going to be either there are going to be either cardiac, pulmonary, or the esophageal. So this one is actually supplying the heart and the lungs. So the next one, and this is going to be the interesting one, is the abdominopelvic viscera. There's multiple layers to it, so we are going to discuss them in detail. So once again, you see the preganglionic nerve fiber leaving through spinal cord through the anterior root, going to the white ramus communicans, and now it occurs at the same level, the synapse, with the postganglionic nerve fiber. However, it does not occur there. The preganglionic nerve fiber is going to leave the sympathetic ganglia and then make a splanchnic nerve, and these splanchnic nerves are going to go all the way down to the sympathetic ganglia, which is present elsewhere in the body, and usually they are actually present at a different major strategic positions in the body, mostly around the major arteries that are making their way. They're making the branches out of the aorta, and that's how they're named. So what happened to these splanchnic nerves? So let's look at that. So there are different ganglia. That's what they make, and in that ganglia, the postganglionic nerve fiber synapse is going to happen. Not in the sympathetic ganglia, but elsewhere. And these ganglia are called the prevertebral ganglia because they are present in front of the vertebral column and are present at the significant branches from the aorta. Significant arteries that are branching away from the aorta, that's where those ganglia are present. So there's a few of the major ones that are present. They are called the cilia ganglia, superior mesenteric ganglia, inferior mesenteric ganglia, renal ganglia, and inferior renal ganglia, superior hypogastric, inferior hypogastric ganglia. So sympathetic outflow, once again, we'll look at the each splanchnic nerve that it's going to make. So it is going to be the greater splanchnic nerve, which is going to originate from T5 to T9, and it is going to give rise to cilia ganglia. Lesser splanchnic nerve will originate from T10 to T11, and it is going to give rise to superior mesenteric and some contribution to the aortico-renal ganglia. Then there's going to be the least splanchnic nerve, which is originating from T12 and giving rise to the rest of the portion for the aortico-renal ganglia. Then the lumbar and the pelvic splanchnic nerves are going to give rise to the superior hypogastric, inferior mesenteric, and inferior hypogastric ganglia. Here you can see all these major prevertebral ganglia. You see the celiac right there, superior mesenteric, aortico-renal right here beside the kidneys, inferior mesenteric, superior and inferior hypogastric. And these are present once again at the major branches of the aorta. So one exception to this thing is the adrenal medulla. So what's the exception? The preganglionic nerve fiber is going to run straight through the celiac ganglia, and it is going to make a direct synapse with the adrenal medulla, and that's basically the adrenal medulla is actually acting as as a ganglia in itself. So the sympathetic nerve is gonna innervate straight to the adrenal gland. You see these two yellow organs above the kidneys; those are both adrenal glands, and they are being supplied with this with the sympathetic outflow. That's the only exception. There is no there is no innervation, sorry, no synapse made, except the sympathetic nerve, the preganglionic nerve, is going to directly innervate the adrenal medulla, and that's how it's done. Now, another major difference between the preganglionic nerve fiber or the splanchnic nerves for the cardiopulmonary and esophageal or basically the thoracic viscera, and the major difference between them and the splanchnic nerves of the abdomen is that the splanchnic nerves for the thoracic viscera are mostly postganglionic, but the splanchnic nerves for the abdominopelvic viscera are mostly going to be the preganglionic ones. That is one of the major differences. So with this slide, we have ended our presentation for today. This is the basic overview of the sympathetic nervous system, its origin and distribution. So we are going to make more videos for this. We are also going to expand our vision beside the neurology. We'll also look into the other systems, and I'm going to make more videos about the other systems so we can get better prepared for the USMLE exam for step 1 and step 2. Thank you so much, and I'll see you soon.